Hey, welcome back to Music Artists, the Vision and Decisions. I am Tyler Norris.
I'm Eric Ferris.
And we are Maggio, MA6IO. You can find us at ma6io.com. We are a production company here in Dallas, Texas, and we specialize in music. Well, obviously. So today we're going to talk something a little bit more abstract than getting technical into the nitty-gritty of production, releasing music, and all that jazz or metal or whatever you listen to. It doesn't matter. It's going to be fears, egos, and insecurities. And that is an interesting topic, I know, but I think it's a very important one because those do show up in the studio, in production, in performing as an artist, and it's kind of important to deal with those and face those head on.
Well, it's important to know what you may be up against when you're getting into working with other people, and sometimes working with other people that you don't know, and when you're trying to navigate through a creative process. It's better to know what you might encounter, because maybe you won't, but it's very possible you will.
Right.
It's probable. It's possible.
Most likely,
Yeah.
unless you've been doing it for a while. It's going to be new because when it comes to your music, your heart and soul goes into it. And when you're collaborating with somebody else, a bunch of stuff's going to come up that you didn't expect to. Maybe if they give you a critique the wrong way, it could make you mad or,
So a lot of this really is focused towards the novice or amateur or the people that haven't surrounded themselves with other people in the process of writing. Because if you've been doing this a long time, you just have to develop a thick skin when it comes to taking feedback, right? Because if you surround yourself with good people, all they're trying to do is help you. So whatever feedback they give you, it may not be the feedback you want to hear, but it might be the feedback that you need to get to the next level. So for new people, when you're talking about your creative ideas, I normally run into two different types of artists. One of them will just play the stuff as loud and as proud as they can, right? Just put it out there, right? But I run into a lot of artists that are real tentative about talking about their ideas and about the words that they put down. If we're working in a session and we're writing, they may not want to show me everything. They want to work through it and edit it and do all these things. But when you're working together with somebody else, sometimes they'll mention a lyric that doesn't end up in the song, but that lyric is super important to me because it actually takes me to a place where it opens the door to other lyrical possibilities. And if it wasn't for that little phrase, I wouldn't have gotten to this phrase.
Right.
So you have to be completely open. And it's okay to be vulnerable. You have to trust the people that you're working with, and I think that comes to surrounding yourself with people that you respect and that you like working with,
and that want to see you succeed.
But the purpose of this episode is to let you know that there's a possibility that you may run into many different types of personalities during this, and just to be aware that when you're dealing with the creative realm, you could have 5 people in this room and you play them something and one person's going to like it and 4 people aren't. And you play another song, a different person's going to like it and the other 4 won't. It's sometimes there's not a right and a wrong, but you have to be willing to put your stuff out there and take a chance sometimes. I don't know. It gets real touchy because I tell people as a producer that you have to tell me, honestly, if you don't like the direction I'm taking this song, I'm not going to know it. I'm not going to be able to read all your body language. I can read some, but not all of it. I want it to be, I want the artist to be as proud of it as possible. And they have to be completely honest. If they tell me, yeah, that bass part was no good, then I'll be like, okay, well, I'll do a different bass part.
Yeah.
Now, maybe not all producers are like that, and again, that's the point of this episode is to let you know you may have to navigate like a different way to say maybe this isn't the right bass part for this particular song. So,
but it also like vice versa, right? So if a producer, especially if you found a producer that you love their style, that you love what they do, and they're recommending you do something, I think it's a good idea to take that into consideration, because clearly they know something, otherwise you wouldn't be going to them.
So it's a fine line between an artist trying to maybe do something that's against the current of what normally would be done, and a producer that says, look, I've done a song like this 100 times. I'm telling you that this probably isn't the way to go. And recently I just rewatched the Freddie Mercury movie.
Oh,
and it you've seen it?
I haven't.
You have not seen it?
I have not. I know. It's a travesty.
That's not right. But it talks a little bit about, I know the movie is sort of, fictional, but it goes into them doing a lot of things that people weren't doing in the time, and the expression on the engineer's face is like, what are y'all doing, And so sometimes if you're adamant about something as a songwriter, as long as you can support your reasons, give a good explanation of what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, most producers will take that into consideration. But what you're saying is they do have to trust the person that has spent their lifetime working on their skill and their craft.
And dealing with, let me talk about fears real quick.
Fears.
Fears. We can add a little sound bit. Fears. Dealing with fears is something that a lot of musicians, songwriters, producers, everybody has to deal with. We've talked about this, I believe, a little bit in the previous episodes, but it is very important, because the amount of songwriters and artists that I've worked with personally, and I'm sure, Eric, you've probably experienced this as well, that are just afraid to release something until it's perfect, is one example of a fear. And that's something you're definitely going to have to overcome, because you'll never grow as an artist unless you release that track, or don't, but you need to move on. Don't stop trying to perfect it, because in all honesty, it's never going to be perfect to what like you think it could be. Maybe 5-10 years from now, you'll be looking back on it and be like, that wasn't perfect. It probably is true, but the thing is, in order to get where you are now, you would have had to grow. And that's my point, is like you need to gain experience. You need to understand, okay, I did it this way, now I can grow and build upon that and get better and better and better.
Yes. If the song is, if you have completed lyrics and completed melody, and you've completed the production of the song and it's recorded and mixed, then the song is done. It's not that you wouldn't go back and do a reimagined version of it later, but yeah, you can't dwell on that, because the song, the way I see it, and this is kind of my philosophy on producing, is when someone gives me a project and it's just like a piano vocal, I know what I want the song to end up like, but I don't know what it's going to sound like until I start working on it. And then the song dictates how it's going to go. I just sit there in front of the keys or guitar or whatever, and it just evolves, right? Like magically, I guess. So to me, as long as there's like no glaring mistakes in it,
right,
the song has spoken, right? It's ended up where it is, and that's it for that song. Then if you're a songwriter, you've already written 5 songs since that one, so you got other things to do.
You got to move on. Yeah, I mean, and just the amount of times I've sent a master and they're like, I love it all, except now after a month of listening to the song, I don't like the way my voice sounds in the second verse of the first half. Can we redo that? And to me, I feel like that's such a huge step backwards when you should be working on new material.
Yeah. And like I said, unless it's a glaring mistake, and most of the listeners aren't dwelling on that. But it was interesting to hear a lot of old stem mixes from the 80s, including like The Police and
Queen and stuff had.
yeah. And listening to the isolated vocal tracks, there was all kinds of noise in the tracks. There was like, I forget which song it was. I don't think it was Message in a Bottle, but it was Message in a Bottle. He's making all kinds of mouth noises, like on purpose. They're all in the mix, right? But you don't notice them. Now, he was kind of doing that on purpose. And also Michael Jackson does the same thing. It becomes, in his example, it becomes like a rhythm track. You know, he did a lot of rhythmic stuff, vocalization stuff. But now, today, we have a lot more powerful editing tools than they did back in the 80s. But still, if you're looking for perfection, then you got a long road ahead of you.
So that's a fear from more of a mixing, production, like mastering standpoint. Do you get a lot of fears as a producer though, and with a songwriter when you guys are working on a track?
So I get the fears I usually deal with in writing is the fear of being able to let people see your songs, your lyrics, or the fear of the song being good enough. And I'm always like, well, let somebody else be the judge of that. It's your song. You're going to be attached to the song, and you might think it's the best song in the world, and it might not be the best song. But I think you need to have some other opinions, and they can't be your family and friends, because they're all going to tell you it's good. So,
that is true. Yeah.
So it's got to be somebody that you trust to give an honest opinion. And if you're working with the producer, I can't think of anybody more qualified to give you an honest answer. So as me, like what I deal with, when someone sends me a piano vocal and they're like, well, I want it to sound like this particular Taylor Swift song, not copying the song, but they want it to have a similar instrumentation. There's like 1,000 things I can do, right? I can go all kinds of different directions. And if I was fearful that I did something and sent it to them that they wouldn't like it, I'd never get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is, you have to be confident in what you're doing, whether you're a songwriter, you're a producer, or whatever, because you're putting yourself into this, and you're having to be vulnerable and say like, okay, this is what I did to your song. What do you think? Got to get to that point,
right?
At some point, and practically do it on a daily basis. So, but I'm fairly confident that they're going to come back and say, hey, this is really great.
Yeah. I will put a little disclaimer there. That doesn't mean you should stop striving to get better and hone your craft. So don't be fearful to show stuff and be confident in what you're showing and working on. But that also doesn't mean to just be like, oh, I've reached the pinnacle. No, I don't have to do any more work or practice anymore or try to get better at songwriting. That's not the case. I think that you should always be trying to get better. We're always trying to get better. We're always sending videos like, oh, did you see this new thing that was like a new song that we could maybe gain some information from about how they mixed it or how they produced it. I think that part of being in music is you have to have that hunger. But that also means you can't let that hunger consume you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And for the majority of people in the world, music in general is an entertainment thing. It entertains people.
Right.
Now, that can mean a lot of different things, A lot of people get emotional when they hear the songs. That's fine. But in a way, they're still viewing it as entertainment, unless you make a living making music. And if you're a songwriter, you have to wear a couple different hats, because when you listen to music, the more you write it, the more you critique it. Not critique it in a like, oh, this is good or this is bad, but like you listen to something and you're like, oh, I noticed what they did right there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always working on your craft, and you're dissecting other people's songs, and most people don't do that. They just listen to it. It's funny enough, when I hear a song for the first time, I don't listen to the lyrics at all. I mean, I probably know the name of the song, but that's not what I listen to the first time. The first time I hear it, I listen to the music and the arrangement, and then I listen the second time, and then I start noticing subtleties in the lyrics, and then after several times, then I figure out like why the first verse set up, how the first verse set up the second verse, and so forth and so on. But the first thing I listen for is like, how did they record this song? You know, is there something in the song that like was unusual, that was noticeably unusual?
Well, that also comes from training your ears to kind of listen for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So 99.9 of the people aren't going to listen
Right.
that way to music. But I know we've kind of diverted away from fears, but
That's a good point still.
yeah.
Another type of fear would be, the fear of investing the money into your craft. So potentially hiring a producer, going to a studio to get it recorded, to get it mixed well. And I mean, these are true fears. I mean, it's money, you're having to spend it. But at the same time, you do have to look at it a little bit more of as an investment in yourself. If this is something you really want to do, if you really want to make it sound amazing, you might be able to do it on your own. That's if you can do that, call me, because I would love to. That gets tough, but you can't be too afraid about not wanting to invest in yourself a little bit. You can take it a little bit at a time, see how it's going, and so you don't have to drop it all at once, but you can slowly get yourself up to that level. And then when you form a good relationship with good people and you surround yourself with those people that are in it to make yourself good as an artist, but also, like this is their job, this is what they do.
A good lesson for songwriter artists is while the main reason people get into music is because of the emotional side of it and the creative side, but you can't be successful unless you understand that it's also a business. So you wouldn't go open a business in retail without investing any money. You just wouldn't. I mean,
right.
There are maybe some very small scenarios where you could do that, but most of the time you have to make a substantial financial investment, and then you get those returns back once the business is running like it's supposed to. A problem that I've seen a lot is people that are creative weren't necessarily born with the business gene. So when it comes to writing songs and being in the studio and doing all that stuff, it's all great. They're in their comfort zone. But the business side of it, you're not going to be as successful if you can't either master that or find somebody that does master that for you. So it goes back to the fears. You don't look at it as a fear. You look at it as an investment in yourself. And if you do the best job that you can and surround yourself with good people that are looking out for your interest, then you'll get something out of it. Mm-hmm. Maybe not like 1 million followers, but you'll get something out of it.
Yeah. It'll elevate your music at least. And your direction.
So I feel like we've talked about like a lot of things here. It wasn't quite as structured, but I mean, it's a lot of good information. We talked about fears and egos and insecurities, and some of them kind of blended into each other. I think they're all valid points. I think what we're trying to say is be prepared, whether you've just entered the music realm or you've been doing this for a little while, that these are things that we all deal with, and if you know what to look out for, then you can position yourself best to overcome any of these fears that we've talked, and even the ones we haven't talked about.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a valid point. Those are just examples that we have. There's going to be more stuff that we haven't even experienced in the studio that's going to pop up. It's just something that you have to think about and potentially keep your emotions in check a little bit, especially, it's art. Like, your emotions could get high, it depends on what it is. And it helps sometimes to step away from the project and calm down and then realize, okay, maybe they were right, or maybe I don't have the right idea on this, or it's just another way to think about the project and your song. And honestly, it's going to elevate your music, because once you can stop focusing on your like emotional side of it, you can put that emotion into the music itself. and give a good performance and make sure that it's turning out sounding the best way it could be, the best possible song that you could make it, and then move on.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. So this week's going to be a little different. We're going to let Eric do the outro. Let's see how well he does.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. This is Eric Ferris.
And I'm Tyler Norris.
And we're with Maggio. That's MA6IO. And you can find us at ma6io.com. And look out for our next episodes upcoming. They'll be riveting, just like this one. And
maybe a little bit more structured, but it's still an important topic.
All right. Well, that's it for now.
You guys have a good one.
All right.